Yeah, I'm STo Len, and I come from Virginia. My mother immigrated from Vietnam. I've lived in New York now for 20 years though, so I've got a little bit of like the South. I've got the South of Vietnam, and then I have New York City as kind of like, those are like what flows in my blood. And I do art. I have done art my whole life pretty much. I think it's like a way to just sort of respond to the world and understand what's going on. And I do performance and printmaking and sound work as well. I think I have a short attention span, so I like to go deep into many things all the time. I think for me, you know, growing up as kind of someone who felt like an outcast in society, art was always a way to escape and make a world where I could fit in. And so, you know, even at an early age, there was nothing better than reading comic books and drawing, you know, because I could make whatever I wanted to make in that moment. So I think an exploration of freedom has always driven me to create art. And as kind of someone who's like always felt like an outlier in society, I gravitated towards the counterculture. So the counterculture where I was growing up in Washington, D.C. was the punk rock scene. And it was, that was a great scene because it had art and it had activism. And I saw how those two things could mesh. So for me, that was a big driving force in giving me the confidence to follow my own passions. I've always been interested in making something out of nothing. And so using, you know, everyday materials, using stuff out of the garbage. As a kid, that's always something that I've gravitated towards, and that's never stopped, you know. So for me, like right now, my printmaking practice is literally pulling trash out of the waterways and creating prints from those, you know. And I think for me, I've always gravitated towards printmaking because of its industriousness, because you can make multiples, because it's very physical. You can just print, print, print. And there's something about this trance-like, methodical process of repetition that I find, you know, hypnotic, and it sort of stops time, where I can kind of be in this space that is, you know, therapeutic and also, you know, productive, and also it comes from this impetus to just make a stamp, make an imprint, you know. I want to make my imprint, you know, and the more you do it, the better that imprint gets. But also, in the case of this work, you know, I'm certainly commenting on factories and the industriousness of, you know, our culture and capitalism and the detritus that comes from that. So the human imprint, for me, is a catalyst to try to document this like legacy of brutality, really. You know, it's like a legacy of extraction and consumption that is endless, you know. So the endless kind of repetition in my work speaks to, you know, how I see the accumulation of our excess and the accumulation of, you know, our disregard for the natural world in favor of profit. As someone who lives in New York, when I first moved to New York, I gravitated towards the waterways because the waterfront was actually fairly abandoned in my neighborhood. And living in New York, just to get some peace and quiet, you know, it's like not easy to get away from people. And so I would often find myself at the waterfront, hanging out and kind of, you know, able to create my own little zone down by the water. And that's what drew me to water initially, was kind of an escape from the city. And the more I hung out there, the more I started to learn about the waterways of New York City, which is often, you know, ignored by the public, right? It's an island. And yet most people don't traverse the waters or get in boats. So I had a friend with a boat, and she showed me how to get out in the waterways, and it was like pretty easy. So that's where it started for me, this adventure of exploring uncharted territories for most New Yorkers. So I started boating around, and then simultaneously I was using water in my printmaking. And so I've always loved printmaking, never been that great. Screen printing, etching, I'm kind of terrible at it, you know? But then when I discovered this technique called suminagashi, which it's Japanese and it means floating ink. And so when I found that, you make a floating painting on top of water, and then you print from the surface of the water. And so this was liberating and mind-blowing for me, because all of a sudden, oh my God, you know, I can collaborate with this material, with water, you know. And so that freed me in this way to explore printmaking in terms of a medium, but also a way to connect with the water. So this installation is called FutureOfAMaterial, or foam for short. And foam it's a series of monoprints on canvas and fabric, investigating the human imprint on the natural world. And for this show, I'm focusing on one material specifically, and that's polystyrene. And so for the past 3 years, I've been collecting polystyrene out of waterways and along walks on the shorelines of urban areas. And eventually, I discovered a printmaking process called gyotaku, which is a Japanese printmaking process that inks the body of a fish and creates a relief print of that fish. And fishermen would use it to document their catches and also create art with it. And so I love kind of connecting with a lineage in art history while updating it for our current times. And so I'm not a fisher myself, but for the past couple of years I've been fishing all this trash out of the water and collecting it. So I had a eureka moment that, oh my God, you know, this is like, these are my fish. So as caretaker of these, you know, pieces of styrofoam and microplastics and things floating in our water, I began printmaking with them as a replacement for the fish and as a way to create an index of, you know, what we're doing to our waterways. You know, I think I'm interested in creating languages. And so I think the best way to learn a language is to immerse oneself in that place where the language is being spoken. This is a world that I've created with this print language that speaks to, you know, the language of industrialization and the language of pollution and of our modern society. So for me, for a viewer, I would love for people to just get enveloped in the work, to get lost in looking at the shapes, and to think about what type of legacy we're leaving behind and what type of monuments we're creating.